All right, Chris, we're right here. We are here, but this time next week, who's not going to be here? That's the big question.
They might be practice squad right here.
Yeah, or somewhere else entirely.
Or over there.
Or completely over there. We're going to break down our roster projections for the 53. Let's get this sucker started.
Get dialed in, Panthers fans. Here comes an in-depth look at your team. Exclusive interviews. Locker room insight.
Ready?
Let's huddle up.
Let's just do it, okay?
For Panthers Playbook, driven by Carolina Ford Dealers. Here are your hosts, Dennis Cox and Chris Lea.
Welcome back to another episode of Panthers Playbook. That is Chris Lea, Dennis Cox here with you. Make sure you subscribe here on Panthers Playbook, whether it's here on YouTube, whether it's your favorite podcast platform, or all those different places. Make sure you subscribe and leave your thoughts in the comments section below. We're giving you our 53-man roster projections as we have one more preseason game coming up here on Panthers Playbook, sponsored by our good friends at Carolina Ford Dealers. With Ford F-150 on your team, it's game on. See your Carolina Ford dealer today, Chris. Here it is. Depth charts. This is the one I got from going to the Jets preseason game on Saturday. I got a lot of names circled around here, Chris. A lot of names circled and a lot of ones scratched off. Because picking 53 off this team, not easy thing to do. And I know Dave Canales and Dan Morgan got a busy task next week.
Yeah, it was tough, man. I think we were talking a little bit about this beforehand. It felt like you had an easier time with offense or with what you said with offense that you had an easy time?
I think I have more guys locked on defense. I think there are a lot more questions on offense.
There are questions. I felt like, though, that this first go-round for me, though, for offense, besides offensive line, was kind of a breeze. I have a surprise in there for mine, but it really was hard for me when it came down to defensive backs and trying to figure out what that situation was going to be like. But, another thing I decided not to do, if they're on any designated list, IR, PUP, or anything like that, I didn't include them.
Likewise.
Even if somebody like Sam Franklin, he's not on IR, so I, had to include him in there. I guess that's a little bit of a spoiler for me.
So so to kind of to let people know, again, let us know your thoughts on who you think should or should not make this team. Just leave it in the comments below, and we'll definitely read it because we're gonna have another projection after we talk about Saturday's game, see who played well, who didn't. But looking at the roster right now, when you have guys like DJ Wanham, Yash Nyman, Jonathan Brooks, as well as Amari Barno, those guys aren't going to count towards your 53-man roster at the beginning of the year because physically unable to perform list, those guys aren't going to count. So that's the one thing you don't have to worry about right now. Now, when those guys are healthy and can return to play, then you have to release guys from your roster. So when we're doing our 53-man projection, like you said, Chris, there are different things that we have to have in mind. There is a different rule in the NFL nowadays where you can, on cutdown days, designate 2 players that are injured for injured reserve with the designation to return. That's where a guy like possibly Sam Franklin, a guy like Dane Jackson, both those guys that have an injury that might keep him out 3 or 4 weeks, you can have them on injured reserve designated to return, and it can free up a roster spot so you can kind of hold on to somebody for a little bit of time before having to go through the obstacle of waivers and all that kind of stuff. But you mentioned offensive line, Chris. Let's go ahead and start there.
All right, let's go by position.
Questions. Let's go.
All right. So for me, I think it's good to keep 9. Basically, you have, you would want to have 1 replacement for each person, but I think 9 to give you more flexibility elsewhere is where it's at. I have Anderson, Christensen, Corbett, Ekwonu, Hunt, Ricky Lee. Now, I'm going to come back to Ricky Lee.
Okay.
Lewis, Moton, and Zavala. So Jack Anderson, I thought he was one of the guys that they picked up recently. I thought he did a pretty good job playing against the Jets. So it was like, all right, we could keep him. They've been talking about Zavala lately a lot, about how they've been impressed with him, and it looks like his injury isn't as bad as they thought. So he's somebody that you could probably use as a body that's there for that. Ricky Lee is the guy where I look at him as he's done okay as a tackle, but once Yash Nyman is off of PUP, that's the guy that, you can see go and maybe get back down to the practice squad. It looks
Mm-hmm.
like Ricky Lee out of A&T has some promise, but right now he's just not there. But that's what I have for my offensive line right now.
Yeah, he's a bit of a project. Obviously, the starters, Aquanu, Damian Lewis, Corbett, Robert Hunt, Taylor Moton, obviously. Brady Christensen, those 6 guys are a lock.
Yep.
This is where things get a little bit tricky for me. I think they keep Ricky Lee for everything you just mentioned because he's kind of your backup tackle right now. I say they keep Zavala, but I'm also going to designate one spot for someone that's currently not on the Panthers roster because
that could happen too.
Carolina Panthers have first waiver claim.
Yep.
I think they go for that 9th offensive lineman. They go outside of the roster. That's just my guess. That's what I'm predicting. I know I'm cheating a little bit here, but this is my roster projection. I think they go outside for at least 1 offensive lineman, possibly 2. But
the next person you can cut to me and on my list is Jack Anderson. So I'm along with you on that.
Easily. So I've got 8 guys similar to what you just mentioned, and I'm keeping my 9th guy as someone who's currently not a Carolina Panther.
We're here.
We're right here.
We're right here.
Right here, Chris.
All right. What's
now,
next?
where are you when it comes to, let's go to the running back room?
Okay. Because Jonathan Brooks is still on PUP.
Don't got to count Jonathan Brooks.
I still I'm wondering at some point in the season if we see the Panthers try to trade Miles Sanders. At some point, somebody's running back within the first couple of weeks is going to get hurt, and they're going to need somebody, right? And so that's a good time to probably start bringing in Jonathan Brooks. You can trade Miles Sanders, but as of right now, I have Chuba Hubbard, Sanders, and Blackshear.
Locks. There's a reason why those 3 guys have not been playing in the preseason so far.
And that was another part of putting this together. If they have been one of the 30 plus that's been held out in each of the 2 games, more than likely they're a lock. So I kept that in mind when putting that together. Blackshear is going to make this team. He has returnability, and then of course Hubbard and Sanders. Those are just natural. You're going to have them there.
That's what I have. I have those 3. Maybe Mike Boone. Maybe you keep Mike Boone early in the year in case you do trade Sanders and Brooks isn't ready to go. You have that extra little bit of depth. Maybe you keep Mike Boone, but I got those 3.
I thought about that, but with Mike Boone, but it's the part for me is like, what do you take away from the rest of the roster? And we'll get there.
Exactly. But I think Mike Boone is someone that you could probably slip onto your practice squad. Probably. I mean, Dylan Johnson, who was waived or released, was not picked up. You could always bring him back if you need to put him on your practice squad. So if Boone gets claimed off waivers from somebody else, okay, you got a guy that you can bring up on an emergency basis. So I got 3 running backs.
That's what it feels like they're doing. It was like a way to kind of keep certain guys around. You probably like Mike Boone a little bit more. It seems like they do. But if he gets claimed off of waivers, then you have Dylan there ready for practice squad.
Okay, so 2 quarterbacks, Bryce Young, Andy Dalton.
We can
Pretty straightforward. Let's go to the wide receiver group. This is where things actually really start to get even more interesting when it comes.
This is where I have my surprise.
Okay, hit me.
You're normal. Deontay Johnson, Adam Thielen, Xavier Legette, TMJ, Terrace Marshall Jr. We called him out last week, and he stepped up. And so he's going to be there. Jonathan Mingo, those 5 for sure. Here's one thing: just by watching the game against the Jets, Emir Smith-Marset was in the game a little bit longer than what I expected him to be. And it felt like he has more to prove to this particular coaching staff. If they're still having him prove things, now, of course, this could change with the Bills game, but if they're still making him prove it, to me, that means that he's not all the way in with that particular crew. So who could take his place? David Moore, because he has experience. He has experience with Dave Canales in the system. He also has return ability. And then also going back to what you talked about with the offensive line, if you're not sold on our Emir Smith-Marset and you have David Moore, he's somebody who's easily replaceable if you look at the waiver wire. Or if you just kind of wait and see maybe in week 1 if somebody gets waived or whatever because of other moves the other teams make. And David Moore is the guy that you want to have around for right now. He's probably going to be inactive most games if he's the 6th guy. But I just kind of worry that Emir Smith-Marset is not is on the outs right now with the coaching staff. So that's my 6.
5 wideouts for me: Deontay Johnson, Xavier Legette, Adam Thielen, Jonathan Mingo, Terrace Marshall Jr.
Only 5.
Only 5.
Okay.
Only 5. Now,
Okay.
I'm going to reserve when we get to tight ends. If they don't keep a 4th tight end, I think they might go waiver wire because David Moore really hasn't shown a whole lot
He hasn't
preseason either. That's the thing.
He hasn't, but
He hasn't.
it's also like I was thinking, typically teams, especially the Panthers, have kept 6. I know this is a different coaching staff. So I was looking at it for just for that, like if you want to have 6 there. So that's what I was thinking, but thinking that David Moore is not going to be around for the entire season. You brought up tight end. You want to just go there?
Let's go.
I've got 4: Trimble, Thomas, Sanders, Matthews. I think Jordan Matthews has played his way onto the roster with the way he's played in the first 2 preseason games and the leadership he's shown in practice. Dave Canales said that he's not necessarily locked into how many guys will be in a particular position, but if you have use on special teams, if you've shown us something in games and we have multiple uses for you, you're going to get yourself a roster spot. That sounded like somebody like a Jordan Matthews, so I think he's on this team.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's what I have. I have all 4 of those guys locked in. Obviously, the first 3 guys you mentioned, Thomas, Trimble, Sanders, those 3 guys are locked. I could see, again, if a wide receiver that they really like becomes available off waivers, that they sacrifice the 4th tight end to go claim that wideout.
But who do you sacrifice in that case?
Jordan Matthews.
You would sacrifice him.
I could see it happening if there's someone that they really like, but I think Jordan Matthews should be on the team personally.
I think the tough part with that is I think you still would want some sort of a veteran presence because this is still kind of a youngish team.
Oh yeah, I'm with you.
And have a veteran presence within that group. Thielen is the guy. When you come to the wide receivers, Dalton is the guy for the quarterbacks. I would assume that Hubbard and Sanders are 1 and 2 when it comes down to the leaders. And you can have Ian Thomas for sure, but he's more of a blocking tight end. He's not as much of a catching. So you want to have somebody who potentially has a catchability to get Jadeveon Sanders ready. That might be the guy.
I'm with you. Now, here again, a couple of caveats as we shift over to defense. By the way, special teams set. Jansen, Hecker,
Pinheiro.
Set. Yeah. That's pretty set. Now, when we get over to right here. Right there. Between the wickets. Right there. Now, when we get over to defense, this is where things can get a little bit, I think actually a little bit more difficult because questions on offense about I don't know. They might have to go to the waiver wire to find guys. I think there are guys that are capable of making this team on defense that are going to get let go just simply because of the numbers game.
Yeah.
Simply because of the numbers game. And to me, safety is the biggest one. Safety is probably the most difficult position for me when it came to picking these 53 guys out because there's a lot of depth there. There's dudes that are showing out.
I mean, they have 3 starting caliber safeties, and then you have all the possible backups behind those guys that could possibly play their ways into being starters. But this was tough for me. I had 6 safeties. Which that may not be the case. It may only be 5, but I have 6. I have Alex Cook, Sam Franklin, Jordan Fuller, Damani Richardson. Excuse me. I think he's played his way on the roster. He's just catching every single interception out there. Then you have Jamie Robinson and Xavier Woods. It was out of those 6, I was going through and who would I be comfortable cutting? Now, this is where we were talking about at the beginning, where Sam Franklin could potentially, depending on how severe his injury is, could potentially start the year on IR designated to return. So in that case, you'd have 5, and that gives you more flexibility for somebody else, and you make that decision later on. But right now I have 6.
So that's I put a star next to Sam Franklin for that reason. And and here's the thing with Jamie Robinson as well. He also is technically listed as a nickel corner. So because he's played both. We actually saw it against the Jets. He played both nickel corner and he played safety. But I have Xavier Woods, Fuller, Nick Scott. Those 3 guys are locked. They haven't been playing this preseason. They're locked to make it. And I have Damani Richardson. I have those as 4 with the designation of Sam Franklin going to IR. That's who I have. I don't know if Alex Cook makes it. I really don't. Because this is, again, the numbers game might not allow it. Maybe they can slip him to the practice squad. But Damani Richardson, with his size and the fact that he's continuing to produce, and gosh, especially if he plays well this coming Saturday, hey, how can you let the dude walk?
Yeah, I put
because someone's gonna pick him up. I feel like
I think I put Cook over Scott, but I think you're right with Scott. So
Nick Scott has been
yeah
sitting on the sidelines during preseason games.
Yeah.
That dude's a lock.
Yeah. So I need to take off Alex Cook then and put Nick Scott in there. But also just with, Franklin, like how do you really leave him off with what he's been doing? Fuller was brought in here for this. Richardson's played his way on. Robinson and Woods. So yeah, safety was the toughest position for me, honestly.
Okay, let's go to corner now. Because the defensive backs, again, this is where there are a ton of questions, especially with the Dane Jackson injury.
Yep.
That's going to keep him out. Probably my guess is until week 3. Dave Canales said 6-ish weeks, which could be 5, which could be 7. Let's be honest. There's a lot of uncertainty there.
Well, if they don't put him on IR, designated to return, that could be a good sign where you could just have him inactive for the first couple of weeks.
Possibly. But then that takes away possibly keeping somebody else. So who do you got there amongst the DBs at corner?
5 corners with the idea of, maybe you start off with 4. And I had the idea that you were talking about where Jamie Robinson could potentially play nickel if you need it because of exactly what I was just thinking about. If it's not as bad and Jackson starts on the 53, he's just going to be sitting out for, 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever. You don't have to have him out for 4 weeks on IR, designated return. So I have Boodle, Hill, Horn, Jackson, and Smith-Wade.
Okay. That's fair. That's exactly what I had. Again, I had Jamie Robinson listed because he's technically listed on this official sheet by the Carolina Panthers as a nickel corner, but again, he can play safety. I think that versatility
on their website they have him as a safety.
Go figure. Go figure, right? So I have J.C. Horn, Dane Jackson, DiCaprio Budo, Troy Hill, Shaw Smith-Wade, Jamie Robinson.
Yeah.
I'll put a star there next to Dane Jackson. Now, Lamar Jackson, not the Baltimore Ravens quarterback, but the Carolina Panthers defensive back, was waived, injured. No one claimed him. He's on injured reserve for the Carolina Panthers. People might be like, well, what about him? In order for him to actually be on an active roster playing for the Carolina Panthers, when he passes a physical, Lamar Jackson does at some point during the season, then the Carolina Panthers can waive him at that point, and he's free to sign with anyone else. But you have to wait 3 weeks as the Panthers in order to bring him back on your roster. So that's how the designation works with IR now with Lamar Jackson. So that's just kind of how things work when it comes to the NFL and guys who aren't vested veterans. So I doubt we see Lamar Jackson this season, at least at any point in the first couple of months.
Stash him away. Keep those rights.
Keep those rights, sign him to a futures contract, bring him back next year, see how things work out. So we're pretty much right here, Chris.
Yeah, we're here.
We're right here. Defensive line was pretty easy for me.
Yeah.
Defensive line was pretty easy for me.
Yeah. I did have a little – what's our guy that flashed and had a pretty good game?
TJ Smith?
TJ Smith.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was going to make it. And then I thought he was going to make it.
Oh, okay.
And as I was looking at it, I was like, you got to have Derrick Brown.
Oh, yeah.
You drafted Clowney, right?
Who's hurt right now?
He's hurt, but we don't know the designation. So that's a part of what I was thinking. He's not designated on any type of list. That could change. If that does change, then TJ Smith is there. You're going to have Shaw Tuttle. You're going to have Ashawn Robinson. And then Nick Thurman.
You said 5?
That's the 5.
Okay, I had 6.
Brown, Clowney, Robinson, Thurman, Tuttle.
Interesting. Okay, because we're definitely different on this one. Obviously, Derrick Brown, Shy Tuttle, Ashawn Robinson. I had Nick Thurman, LeBron Ray, and TJ Smith. I had 6. And I think
you have Clowney off.
I have Clowney off, and I think he ends up on the practice squad because no one's really seen him yet because he played part of the first preseason game.
Yep.
And that was it. That's it. He played part of the first preseason game, taken to the locker room. Have not seen him since.
I honestly have no problem with what you said. And honestly, that was the defensive line was probably the next hardest for me after safety because it was like, do you keep 5 or do you keep 6?
I think they keep 6.
And then, but then like, who do you take off and where? Because like with edge, at this point for me, you only have room for 5. And so, I mean, maybe with what there is one guy that I have at edge here that you could take off to put in LeBron Ray, because that's who I have.
Let's
basically
go for it.
off. But there's a reason why I have him here. So I have Calebon Chason, of course, Clowney, DJ Johnson, Eku Leota. Yeah, he's played his way on the team to me. And then I put Luigi Villain. But when DJ Wanham is ready, Luigi Villain is the first one off.
Sure. That makes sense.
And so I figured for edge rusher, and also with the possibility of some of these guys like Eku Leota probably playing on special teams, you have some flexibility there with guys just in case, and you have enough that you can kind of pull in and out. Also, when Amari Barno is ready, this is going to make that difficult because somebody's going to have to go out of here, whether it's Barno himself or Leota. Or Calebon Chason if he's not stepping up. So
yeah, he hasn't really done a whole lot out there. I have Clowney, Chason, DJ Johnson, Eku Leota. I just have 4.
Okay.
With the possibility, I think they add a 5th edge rusher off the waiver wire. I think they add a 5th one off the waiver wire.
That's the position where I feel like there's a lot of bodies, but there's a bunch of guys who are about the same. I think.
Sure.
When you have Clowney and Wanham when he's ready, those are your clear top edge rushers. I think they want to explore what's there with DJ Johnson a little bit more. I personally wouldn't, but that's what they would want to do. After that, everybody else is pretty much the same, including Barno. So yeah, there's a lot of hard decisions to make. So if you do get somebody that you feel like is better than everybody else that's there, then yeah, you can definitely get that guy off a waiver wire.
Okay. Inside linebacker, pretty straightforward for me. Shaq Thompson, Josie Jewell, Claudin Charolette, Trevin Wallace. Depending on the foot injury, Tay Davis.
I have 5, and those are my 5.
Yep.
And that was a part of the decision making here is he's not on any designated list. So yeah, Charolette, Davis, Jewell, Thompson, Wallace. Those are my 5.
I can legit see, based off what we talked about, 3-4 guys claimed off waivers to fill spots.
For sure.
I honestly think
for sure
the final 53 will have guys on the roster that aren't currently in a Panther uniform.
Yep.
That's the best way to describe it.
It feels like right now we are mostly in alignment with what we want right here. We just have a few differences as far as like how many, defensive line to have versus how many edge guys, how many corners, how many safeties or whatever. But the defense, I mean, you have more players there, so it's tough. And, but I think we're mostly in alignment, and the things that we don't necessarily agree with, we agree that there's flexibility there to cut those particular people to move on to something else.
I think a majority of the claims come from the offensive side of the ball. That's where I think a majority of the claims come from the offensive side of the ball at offensive line and possibly either wide receiver. That's honestly where I see it happening.
Yep.
That's where I see it happening the most, Chris. But we'll see. Hopefully we'll see some starters maybe play on Saturday.
If you get a really good corner too, I mean,
I would not be shocked there either.
If you get a really good corner, like, there's a lot of guys to like at corner, but honestly, you could probably part with Boodle.
I was thinking the exact same
thing. If you get a really good corner, you probably can part with Boodle. Put him back on the practice squad.
Hard to see that Boodle walk.
We love that Boodle work. Work.
We love that.
Let me see that Boodle work.
We love that Boodle. Make sure you subscribe here to Panthers Playbook again, sponsored by
Boodle covering everywhere. Boodle covering everywhere. Covering everywhere. Oh man.
Do you think Dave Canales comes in? I cut you, DiCaprio Boodle. Panthers Playbook, sponsored by friends at Carolina Ford Dealers. Wherever you go, whatever you do with the power and technology.
I really hope they don't watch this, man. We're gonna walk into those locker rooms and somebody's gonna punch us in the face.
It's game on. See your Carolina Ford dealer today.
It's all love, though, guys. We love you.
It really is.
Keep
it
pounding.
Really is. Pause. We'll see you on Saturday after the preseason game against the Buffalo Bills. We'll have another episode for you, so make sure you're locked in. Peace.
Yep.